Welcome, Dr. Doug Lisle, and everyone, welcome to our initial live event of the Montgomery Heart and Wellness community. It's Optimal Health Community. Our special guest is Dr. Doug Lisle, who's going to help us go through some of the intricacies of the psychology. And today we're going to ask him to be a little bit of a sociologist and help us work through our own issues with getting healthy. And Dr. Lisle is a PhD in psychology, and he lectures at the True North, has done so for over 30 years. I've had the pleasure of visiting with him and lecturing with him. He's been here in Houston a couple of times, and you are in for a treat today. What are some of the psychological benefits of community, and how can it help individuals?
I like to say that there's really two kind of major problems when it comes to trying to go in a healthy direction. The first thing is what I call the pleasure trap, which is the fact that we were designed to seek out the most pleasurable aspects of nature that we could find, and that chocolate bars and chocolate cake and Coca-Cola and French fries aren't part of nature.
So, boy,
so what we've done is, I call it clumsy ingenuity, that brilliant human beings over the centuries have figured out to isolate the chemicals that cause the pleasure mechanisms. And then we basically make our food out of those things. So we're supposed to have a little bit of sugar and a little bit of fat and a little bit of salt in our food by nature. But if we pour it in there artificially, then we get a huge pleasure response. And so that creates a false signal, and it lures people to do things that are not in their best interest. So that's the pleasure trap. It's very hard to learn our way out of that. We got an adult audience here, we don't have any little kids. It's like basically if you're trying to learn to ride a bicycle and every time you fell off, you had an orgasm, that's what it would be very difficult to learn how to ride that bicycle well.
Exactly.
That's kind of what this is like. So that's one problem, and that's a giant problem. But the second problem that you talk about is community. We're not we're not wolverines that go out into the wild and there's one wolverine for 50,000 acres and it eats by itself. We eat with other people. We can eat solitarily, but we very often don't. And even if these days, even if you're eating by yourself, your friends want you to take a picture and post it on Instagram what you ate. So food is very social for people. It always has been, and it's part of our nature. And so if we are doing something very differently than the rest of our tribe, it's going to feel very isolating, and we're going to feel like we're essentially kind of doing something wrong. And even if we're really convinced that we're right, then our next move is often to sort of argue and educate. And then that runs into a whole set of problems in its own right. Remember, these people are falling off the bicycle and having orgasms. I mean, they're not going to believe us, or they're not going to embrace us. Not everybody ever makes this attempt. And some people who might make an attempt to do this will often do so in their own good time. And that's why a community like what you're trying to do, or to build a community of people that are on the same page at the same time, that can be a super useful thing. We don't appreciate generally how important it is to observe other people around us succeeding. It's a super important thing. It has a huge impact on our self-confidence.
Is there a way I can select or create a competing community that I can go to? Maybe it's called a safe space community. Share the potential dynamics of that.
That's huge, right? That's everybody that ever tried to get away from alcohol and had to get away from their family and their friends and essentially lay down some rules with those people. And then they go to AA and they join a group of people that are like, yeah, this is the most important thing that I ever do, is to do this. So it is a huge deal, as you say. One of the problems with the pleasure trap is very often our own families are not going to be on board. There's no way that the average person is going to be this motivated. So if you happen to be somebody that is, it's very likely that you are fairly isolated. You could be at odds with your tribe. And that's why a new tribe Sometimes, Doc, all it takes is one person. It takes sometimes one friend that says, oh boy, do I know what you're trying to do. I'm trying to do this too. And I'm having some success. And of course, it's huge if you can have a group. If it turned out that really healthy food and really unhealthy food were basically the same in terms of how much dopamine they cause to fire in the pleasure centers of the brain. If that were true, it was just a matter of education which one to eat, then we wouldn't have a problem.
Wow.
That is not the problem.
Wow.
The problem is this is sort of cocaine, no cocaine, and we've got a cocaine addict. We're like, hey, listen, why don't you just snort baking powder? It's pretty much the same. And it's like, no, it's not. Okay.
No, it's a shortcut that you go through. Now, I want to pivot. I'm faced with people who are in the sick care environment. And so the aspect of community is that oftentimes they're in that medical community. And many of my colleagues, the page where you've got to take these medications, you're going to be sick for the rest of your life, you've got to do this. And then it's even worse when you're in a hospital because, everybody has a doom and gloom sentence. And it's like, I don't know, you're pretty sick, you're not going to make it. There's little hope. And they don't want to give any false hope. They want to give no hope. And so the psychological perspective regarding what are the major shortcomings of our current sick care system and the way we manage chronic illnesses from a psychological perspective, or perhaps psychosocial or sociological perspective?
It's a disaster. Okay, it's exactly what you said. People will go into their doctor and they'll be depressed because, maybe their career isn't going so well, or the relationship's not going so well, or something in life is a struggle and they're feeling it and they haven't got a good solution yet. And they get labeled, quote, depressed. And the doctor says, well, you need to take these medications. Well, how long? Well, maybe for the rest of your life. It's like, holy smokes, what is that? I can't tell you how many times I've had people on the other end of the phone call telling me that the doctors told them that they had to be on this or that for the rest of their life. It's insanity. And the whole medical system, it's basically like you've got a village living on a river and the river's polluted. And everybody's drinking this polluted water and getting sick, and then they're taking these really powerful herbs or some weird medicine to try to treat the symptoms. It's like, really, everybody? The problem is the water's bad. You're being poisoned, for God's sakes. The solution isn't some fancy medication. The solution is to get rid of the poison. And we're being poisoned by the food. So when you see somebody, walking around with 50 extra pounds on them and moseying into CVS to get their metformin, it's like you're looking at somebody dying of food poisoning.
Yeah.
And it's like the medication is just pitiful.
Many of our listeners and certainly many of our patients deal with certain specific issues. And I'm going to run down some clinical scenarios and find out if or how community support can help these. I'm kind of rattle them off real quick and let you address them. Sure. So in the context of an individual who has a chronic illness, who is maybe acutely ill, let's say someone in scenario one who's acutely ill in the ICU or recovering from a major surgery, they're in the hospital and they're sick. That's one. Or perhaps a middle-aged person with a stable chronic illness is on a bunch of medications. A third one will be a young middle-aged person without chronic illness, but wanting to prevent chronic illness. Maybe they have family members who have diabetes and heart disease and the like, and they're trying to prevent these things. Yeah. And the last one is someone needing to improve their physical or mental performance. Let's say they're kind of healthy, but they're trying to do something extraordinary, train for a marathon or learn ballet or learn a different language. So give us how community, or if community, can help those areas. And I give that spectrum because I understand all those things as part of the spectrum of optimal health, whether you're trying to recover from acute illness or you're trying to increase your life performance.
Somebody that's in deep trouble, community is essential because they may need somebody to actually cart some food in for them that they can eat it. I've had people that were in trouble and they were going to wind up with some nasty procedure, but it was essential that they had, a day or two of decent food before they went into that thing, and that could make a difference in their outcomes. So just getting help when you're in real trouble, that's a super important aspect of community. But the biggest, most important aspect of community is actually a reaffirmation that you are on the right path. Whether how difficult that particular path is for you, knowing that you've got a group of people that is committed to being on this path, and that you understand that they're doing this not because they're showing off or not because they're trying to demonstrate incredible iron will, but rather that they know the truth. And the truth is that the problems that I'm having physically are very likely to be due to the varying degrees of struggle that I have with the pleasure trap. And that it's really about me, trying to find my way in a jungle where everybody's going the wrong direction. So it means that human beings by themselves against the crowd are in trouble. Human beings with a little bit of community with them suddenly get way tough. That's why for everything that Dr. Montgomery is talking about, community is so important.
Anything you want to say, you're filled with so much insight.
Virtual is good, but if people can find a way to get face to face once in a while with each other and sit down and share some food, and if they can do that, if you can organize that in your life even once in a while, this is like super big for people. This is just a reaffirmation that I'm not out here alone, and that there's people that are walking this walk and doing their very best to go this direction, just like I am. At places like that, we all know we're not perfect, but that's good to know that there's people that despite the challenges of the pleasure trap, that it's still worth the fight, and it's worth going this direction. That's a super important thing for everybody to have it, to have that community be support periodically. I think it's really important.
Thanks again, and we'll probably invite you to one of these events again. So we look forward to seeing you in person and what have you. But everybody give Dr. Lisle a digital applause. You have your reactions there. We do appreciate everything you've said and shared with us today, and we'll be sharing this information with our community. So until next time, Doug, I'll see you. Have a good one.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody.